We've been told in recent days that Joe Biden and Kamala Harris have both been getting regularly tested now that they are out on the campaign trail more.
The president had campaign rallies scheduled this weekend, including one in Florida. Those are likely to be postponed. The House Thursday narrowly passed another coronavirus relief package worth $2.2 billion. It will not likely be considered in the Senate. America is listening to Fox News.
From the Fox News Podcasts Network. Download it.
As the island takes a stand against the coronavirus, so do the professionals at Horizon Properties. As a property owner and with the current health scare the island is facing, the last thing you should worry about is collecting rental payments or sending out a repairman to your property. Let Horizon Properties take care of that for you as you remain safe at home. Call Horizon Properties at 646-7616 or 777-7792. You can also visit them at www.horizonproperties.com. Horizon Properties, always there for you.
Mezcla Chamorro Fusion Bistro in Hagåtña and Mezcla Dos Upper Tumon are now open for takeout and delivery services. For more information, call now at 479-2652 or 3 or Mezcla Dos at 646-6295. Mezcla Chamorro Fusion Bistro brings you island hospitality with the true taste of modern Chamorro cuisine at the comfort of your own home. They take your local favorite dishes and serve them with extra flair you will only find at Mezcla. Mezcla, a true taste of Guam.
News alert. President Trump and First Lady Melania Trump have both tested positive for the coronavirus. Their tests were done Thursday after presidential aide Hope Hicks became symptomatic and also tested positive. The president tweeting that he and the First Lady are in quarantine and will get through this together. Concerns about the voting security in Philadelphia after a theft of crucial equipment.
The theft from a warehouse of computer thumb drives used to program Philly's voting machines, along with a laptop of an employee from the machine's manufacturer, is raising eyebrows. A city elections commission spokesman is expressing confidence the incident will not impact the integrity of the election. A spokeswoman for the machine manufacturer says the laptop did not contain any sensitive election-related data and was not used for election programming. As for the USB drives, the spokeswoman was not able to address any specifics, including how many were taken and what was on them. City Hall says 24/7 security will soon be added to the warehouse. Tom Rigotti, Fox News.
We'll get a snapshot of the job market in a few hours when the Labor Department issues its September jobs report. Economists predict it will show a job gain of 850,000. That would mark a third straight monthly slowdown in job growth after June's gain of 4.8 million jobs. There's been another guilty plea in the college admissions cheating scandal.
A former employee of the mastermind behind the scheme pleading guilty to one count of conspiracy to commit racketeering. Prosecutors say Michaela Sanford took online classes for students who then used her good grades when applying to colleges and universities. William Rixinger orchestrated the scam, collecting hundreds of thousands of dollars from wealthy parents to cheat their children's way into elite schools. Singer used the money for bribes to inflate test scores and create phony athletic credentials for students. The Justice Department charging nearly 60 people in the multi-million-dollar scheme, roughly 40, including actresses Felicity Huffman and Lori Loughlin, pleading guilty so far.
Fox's Steve Rapp reports. I'm Jack Callahan. Fox.
Pick up dinner for you and the family at Chili's. We got you covered with a variety of delicious family platter options, like our fajita trio, Cajun chicken pasta, or our crispy chicken crispers. Or order off our new menu for you and a friend and indulge in our tasty burgers, tacos, and ribs. Get your Chili's favorites in a way that works for you. Call 648-7377 or WhatsApp 929-7376 for curbside pickup orders. Or get delivery with Good to Go. Chili's, you can still savor the moments at home.
As the island takes a stand against the coronavirus, so do the professionals at Horizon Properties. As a property owner and with the current health scare the island is facing, the last thing you should worry about is collecting rental payments or sending out a repairman to your property. Let Horizon Properties take care of that for you as you remain safe at home. Call Horizon Properties at 646-7616 or 777-7792. You can also visit them at www.horizonproperties.com. Horizon Properties, always there for you.
$5 foot long. High with veggies.
They're back. Any footlong is a $5 footlong when you buy one at regular price. At participating locations, Subway, eat fresh.
Tall Tales with Bob Klitzkie is brought to you by Bank Pacific. Banking on the Pacific for 66 years. Tall Tales with Bob Klitzkie is brought to you by Security Title, providing solutions for complex real estate transactions.
Welcome to Tall Tales with Bob Klitzkie, the only show on talk radio where common sense is a lot more common. Phone lines are now open at 888-TALK. That's 888-8255. And now, The Point proudly brings you Tall Tales with Senator Bob Klitzkie.
A well-regulated militia being necessary to the security of a free state, the right of the people to keep and bear arms shall not be infringed. No matter how you slice it, that's one of the important parts of the show, because the show is Constitution-oriented, law and order-oriented, conservative-oriented. So if that's why you're here, you came to the right place. Let's start out with Zemi Ikotny. Okay, so I'm going to start out here with today's Daily News editorial, which of course is not a Daily News editorial at all. It's boilerplate from USA Today. And it isn't all of the boilerplate. It's only the left side of the boilerplate, and it's short. So I'll read it and use my blue pencil on it, my usual critical manner of reading stuff from the Daily News. In the midst of a deadly corona pandemic, economic distress, and racial turmoil, American voters deserved a serious exploration of the nation's problems and the range of solutions. Instead, they got a chaotic insult fest that was like one of those awful 90-minute movies that leaves the audience dumber than when it went into the theater. Entering Tuesday night's clash in Cleveland, it was clear what each presidential nominee had to accomplish. For Democrat Joe Biden, the task was to present himself as an acceptable alternative for anyone turned off by President Donald Trump. Biden has spent his lengthy career being just that, acceptable. Nothing extraordinary, but not too hot, not too cold. Sort of like Goldilocks' porridge, right?
You mean Plugs Locks?
Yeah, Goldilocks' porridge. Not too hot, not too cold, just right. Not too hard, not too soft, not too liberal, not too conservative, not too smart. That's enough. For Trump, the goal was a bit more complex and highly contrary to his nature. He had an opportunity not just to energize his base and heap congratulations on himself, but also to reach out to the relatively few undecided voters and outline a second-term agenda. Biden was not great. Let me say that again. Biden was not great. He stumbled through sentences that sometimes stopped and then resumed in an adjacent lane. He sideswept the issue of whether he would try to pack the Supreme Court in retaliation for Republicans ramming through a replacement for the late Justice Ruth Bader Ginsburg. As for Trump, he was nothing short of a horror show. He apparently didn't get the memo about trying to expand his appeal. To that end, after the debate, his handlers touted his line that under Trump, we have become weaker, sicker, poorer, more divided, and more violent. We suspect that another Biden line, "Will you shut up, man?" will prove to be more enduring.
And that's just the Democrat Party.
Yeah. This was not the presidential debate that Trump needed to catch up with the poll-leading Biden. More important, was not the kind of debate that reassures America about the fate of its troubled democracy. Okay, well, so much for the Daily News. At least it was short. The Post seems to have lost its mojo lately. Some really bland editorials.
They went Biden.
They started to Biden out. Not too hard, not too soft, not too sharp, not too dull, not too sweet, not too sour, not too readable. Impasse on pandemic relief worrisome for Guam. So they borrowed a page from the Daily News's book, and instead of really writing about local stuff, they're writing about Congress and some more. Give me some more money. They do get around to the Guam angle on the second page. For Guam residents, households, and small business employers, the prospect of not getting additional federal pandemic aid or the possibility of a pandemic financial assistance for Guam that will not be enough to keep our island economy from free falling is a scary thought. And it is a scary thought for everybody except for those who seem to think that they are insulated from the effects of this pandemic. Government employees, members of the legislature who draw their paycheck even when Tina went to Saipan on a Saturday. I did a FOIA and asked, well, did you dock yourself for being off island? She wrote back and said, well, we don't get sick leave or, came back with a non-answer. So rain or shine, pandemic or no pandemic, stay home, be in session, it doesn't matter. They draw their $55,307 per annum and broken down into 52 biweekly checks. So you remember Mad Magazine, Jose?
Oh, yeah.
Yeah, do you remember Alfred E. Neuman?
Sure do.
What was his slogan?
What? Me worry?
Uh-huh. Yeah, so we've got the Alfred E. Newman legislature here.
I miss that guy.
Yeah, well.
All I have to do is look down on.
He may not be around, but his spirit lives on, yeah. So for the government, for the governor, for the whole folks that work in the governor's office, all the rest, what? Me worry? Pandemic? Is there a pandemic right now? I don't know. Pardon me, I got to go down to the bank and cash my check. Well, at least go to the ATM because the bank is closed. So, and then, of course, for the government, as long as that spigot is turned on in Washington and money flows out of that spigot into the Treasury of Guam and then out to the people, as it flows through, some of it is diverted back to the Treasury as taxes. So when people get these various forms of federal relief and they go out and spend it, they pay gross receipts. They pay income tax on the unemployment money, and that so far has kept the government afloat. But I just have this sense that it's not going to last forever, and when it stops, then maybe being in the government payroll won't be such a sweet deal after all. Maybe folks on the government payroll and the legislature will find out what it's like out here in the outside. For Guam residents, household, and small business employers, the prospect of not getting additional federal pandemic aid or the possibility of pandemic financial assistance for Guam that will not be enough to keep our island economy from free falling is a scary thought. But we haven't really heard the government of Guam start major discussions on what-if scenarios of a further worsening of the economy that, according to local banker Philip Flores, recently has already been shattered. The economy is shattered. Now, Phil thinks it'll be 2022 before the economy comes back. I have prognosticated right here on this very microphone that the economy will never come back to the way it was last year. And for most of our politicians, long-range planning consists of, let's wait till things get back to normal. This passes for long-range planning. But they're never going to get back to the way things were last year. And I'm predicting that there will be hotels down in Tucson that are boarded up because there's no business. And it is more economical to close them and board it up than to try to stay open and try to compute for what little bit of business there is. I'm also predicting that the Japanese will never come back in the numbers that we have become so accustomed to. So what we got to do is what we have to figure out, what can we do with 10,000 empty hotel rooms and 35,000 people that are really willing to get out and work. And sitting around and waiting and scratching our heads is not the answer. Back to the editorial. I'm reading it again. But we haven't really heard government of Guam start major discussions on what-if scenarios of a further worsening of the economy that, according to local banker Phil Flores, recently has already been shattered. From recent indications, GovGuam is still proceeding with a nearly $1 billion budget and the belief that tax collections will continue to exceed projections. And with the exception of one or two senators, elected officials have been quiet, and there hasn't been a public discussion on what the government of Guam needs to do if federal bailout falls short of what's needed, if at all, if it happened at all. They're elected to consider every possibility and prepare our community accordingly, making hard decisions if needed. We hope they live up to that expectation. Let me see if I could mimic the average senator's approach to his. Whoa, bad mistake. Her is better than his.
My buzzer's broken. You're lucky.
Yeah, this is their approach to where we are right now. Can you tell our radio listening audience what I'm doing here, Jose?
You are crossing your fingers.
I'm crossing my fingers. I'm not in the legislature, but by gosh, I know how to cross my fingers just like they are. And that's their long-range plan. I'm crossing my fingers, hoping that things are going to turn out okay. All right, so much for the Post. Not too bad, but not gold star material again today. Okay, so let's maneuver from there over to the card. Let me see if I can open up my Facebook here. Maneuver from there over to... Probably ought to turn the volume down, right?
Who was that?
That was the story of two Jimmys, right? Okay, so here's the card for today. I've got, starting out with more Topaznia, Post versus PNC and KOAM, Crozier versus Mertz, picking up on my chat with Daniel yesterday, Lou versus the First Amendment, capitalizing on Barr versus London Breed, Thomas I. Kreis versus the black community, and then I've got some holdovers, Tall Tales versus Supreme Court, Justice Ginsburg versus the unborn, Barr versus BLM, etc. So starting out with more Topaznia. Today is a momentous day. Neither newspaper, nor today, nor neither TV station last night, nor Troy's website, Candid News, none of those five had the word Topaznia in them anywhere. Yeah.
Shocker.
Uh-huh. So it's not what the media did, Jose.
It's what the media didn't do.
Yeah. So finally, Ray Topaznia has at least temporarily faded out of the spotlight after his set to with the public auditor B.J. Cruz, who was complimentary to Ray Topaznia in a way, telling the entire island that Ray Topaznia was a liar and that he could lie with a straight face. So we've hypothesized that Ray has a great career as a professional poker player. I suppose as a lawyer, right, to be able to lie with a straight face. Certainly in the world of politics, that's a pretty worthwhile skill. Anyhow, no Ray Topaznia for today. I have a suspicion that he'll be back next week. Okay, then I've got the Post versus KOAM and PNC. And here's a story that the Post ran this morning. It's the end of the line for Guam businessman Sedfrey Linsongan's self-filed lawsuit that attempted to challenge the federal cockfighting ban's applicability on Guam. District Court of Guam Chief Judge Francis Tydenko Gatewood denied Linsongan's request for a court order stopping the federal government from enforcing the ban on Guam. 2 sentences. In 2 sentences, the Guam Daily Post was able to do more than PNC News or KOAM with a whole TV broadcast. As you remember yesterday, I gave you a taste of the PNC News, which was just a press release from this guy named Pacell, who runs the Animal Welfare Association. And the PNC and KOM didn't even tell you who the plaintiff was in the lawsuit. So the Post does it in 2 sentences. The really important thing here is this. Sedfrey Linsongan was the plaintiff. He's not a lawyer. The judge denied his relief when he asked for a court order stopping the federal government from enforcing the cockfight ban on Guam. So let's give the Post a big hand. Who, when, where, why, all that stuff. Who, when, where, press release. Okay, going on from there to Crozier versus Mertz. And yesterday I read a story from the Military Times, which was probably the Navy's final word. Well, not the Navy's, but the media's final word on the Crozier controversy. You'll recall that Crozier was the CO of the Big Stick, the carrier called the Teddy Roosevelt. And Crozier wrote emails through an unsecured channel that leaked to the San Francisco Chronicle that painted a pretty grim picture for the sailors on board the Big Stick, pointing out that, it looked like COVID was going to run rampant. And because of that, Crozier was relieved. And he was very popular with his crew when he marched down the gangplank for the last time. His crew came out on deck and gave him a rousing cheer, which so angered the acting Secretary of the Navy at that time that he got on a jet plane, spent 20 hours flying out here, went aboard the Teddy Roosevelt, grabbed the squawk box, and scolded Crozier over the squawk box on the Teddy Roosevelt, telling the crew, that he'd made the right decision, that Crozier was a jerk. Well, that was the end of the career for the acting Secretary of the Navy. First of all, the Navy gave Crozier a clean bill of health. But then the Chief of Naval Operations said, no, you guys, take another look. They took another look, and they sustained the relief of Crozier, and they also relieved the task group commander of his command. So two naval careers crash. That's it. I mean, they'll be able to stay in and finish up, but Crozier, if Crozier ever had stars in his eyes, they're gone. He'll hang on to his rank as captain, but his career is, for all practical purposes, over. They may put him in charge of a reserve unit somewhere, but that would be about it. So that seemed to be the end of the Crozier story until the Military Times ran a story where they were able to procure some of the testimony from the investigation that the commander of the 7th Fleet, William Mertz, conducted. And here's the bottom line from that investigation. Vice Admiral William Mertz, commander of the U.S. 7th Fleet, told investigators that Crozier either did not understand military efforts underway to evacuate the crowded ship or wanted to undermine those efforts. Mertz hypothesized that Crozier screwed up and panicked or wanted to play hero. Either way, he surrendered and brings into question his resiliency and toughness in command. Crozier, a native of Santa Rosa, was stripped of his position, but received a rousing hero send-off from his crew, who credited him with saving their lives. The story begins by saying the dismissed captain of a U.S. Navy aircraft carrier knew he was jeopardizing his military career when he broke protocol and sent a now famous email warning of possible sailor deaths due to a coronavirus breakout on board. But Brett Crozier says in a witness statement obtained by the San Francisco Chronicle that he did so in an urgent effort to help avoid a larger catastrophe. So I thought it was of some interest that I'd bring it back again, because we were all quite interested as it was going down. And at the end of the show yesterday, I got a call from Daniel, who is a sailor, who mounted a vigorous defense on Crozier's behalf. And as well as I could restate what Daniel's theory was that Crozier could see the problem, knows that the Navy oftentimes moves rather slowly, and that nothing was being done, and that in the face of nothing being done, sailors were going to die. So he had nothing but praise for Crozier. Anecdotally, he said he was the best commander that he'd ever worked for and one of the sharpest individuals that he'd ever known. Let's take a short break here, and we'll come right back to the USS Theodore Roosevelt.
Are you fed up with those long bank lines? Do you wish you had a bank who gave you faster service? Well, by enrolling in Bank Pacific's new mobile app, you don't even need to wait in line. But even if you do want to come down in person, we're more than happy to see your smiling face, as long as you have a mask. Because our service is so good, we don't believe in lines. Because for 66 years, we've been making sure you get the service you deserve. Because where others put branches, we place roots. And we're rooting for you. Member FDIC.
Okay, Google. Hey, Siri. Hi, Bixby.
Go ahead. I'm listening.
Open the Point app. Opening.
Live stream, on demand, swap stations, check out the visual radio. Get the free app available on the App Store and Google Play, or go to thepoint.gu. Tall Tales with Bob Klitzkie is brought to you by Horizon Properties, doing real estate since 1978. 14 years here on Guam. Call Maria Miller from Horizon Properties at 777-7792.
Now, more Tall Tales with Bob Klitzkie. Spitting truth like watermelon seeds at a summer picnic. Call now, 888-TALK, 888-8255.
So, Daniel had nothing but lavish praise for Crozier, and what he did, if Daniel's analysis is correct, is admirable. He made a lifetime sacrifice of his career, and obviously his career was going quite well. To be a captain and be commander of an aircraft carrier means that you have almost unlimited career potential. But Daniel thought, this guy, what Crozier did was admirable, because he saved the life of several of his crewmen. So after that was over, I wanted to kind of make it a little bit harder, which is kind of my job description here as a talk show host. And I posed the question, how should the matter of Captain Crozier, Wuhan virus, and the Teddy Roosevelt be treated in leadership courses at the Naval Academy? So I'll let that brew for a moment, and I've got Viola on the line, right? Yeah, viola, not a bass fiddle, but a viola, right? A viola. Good afternoon, Viola.
Hi, good afternoon. I'm speaking to the most pro-life advocate of a radio host. I think I am, Mr. Klitzkie.
Well, I sure try to be.
Well, that's wonderful, because we're in the right show. Well, I'd like to put in a piece here. Mary Lou did a very good job with Ray Gibson this morning. This Sunday, October 4th, is we're doing a life chain here in Guam. It's a prayerful and peaceful public witness of pro-life individuals praying for our nation and for an end to abortion. And I know you like the where, when, why, and that. I'm going to put that right on now. This is on October 4, 3:30 to 4:30. We will be gathering at ITC Corner across the street at Mayor's Park. And I think we're going to use the FHP Corner too. 3:30 to 4:30. We're calling on all pro-life hearts to come and stand in solidarity, to be a witness to Guam that we are pro-life and we have to have babies be born, stop abortion, bring umbrellas, bring a sign. We will do the distancing, but that's the delivery for you this afternoon, Mr. Klitzkie.
So that's 3:30 Sunday afternoon at the ITC intersection, correct?
Yes, correct.
And Mary Lou delivered the same message this morning?
Very good message with Ray Gibson. She even gave a background of that. I know she talked about the history of life chain, and she quoted Catholics, non-Catholics, Christians, atheists who believe that, life begins at conception. Precious, precious moment. So she called the morning show, people, and I hope we have the abundance of people listening to you to send this message.
I heard Mary Lou myself. Did you hear Mary Lou, Jose?
I sure did.
Wonderful.
I was listening in. I sure did. And then I wasn't told to listen in.
Uh-huh.
Sometimes that happens when...
Who told you to listen in?
Sometimes it happens when Mom tells you to listen in.
Yeah. Okay.
That's fun.
So we're on the right side of that issue, Viola, and I wish you guys the best of luck on Sunday afternoon, okay? Thanks for calling.
Absolutely. Thank you so much. Bye-bye now.
Bye. Okay, so Viola, pro-life protest, Sunday afternoon. Are you listening, Governor Lulian Guerrero, the first female governor of Guam, the first openly pro-abortion governor of Guam? You ought to be listening. Okay, so back to Crozier versus Mertz. And the question that I attempted to pose to Daniel, but we ran out of time, and this probably wasn't fair. Daniel made a Daniel was pretty well invested in his praise of Crozier, and I can understand it. What he did was quite a sacrifice. But my question is this: how should the whole matter be handled in leadership courses at the Naval Academy or the Naval War College or similar academic institutions? So, you lay out the factual situation. What does the responsible commander do? And I'm going to throw something in here that makes this a really hard one to deal with, and that's this. One of the things that makes military life different from anything else that people do is this, that in some situations, there are situations where a senior, and maybe an officer, maybe a senior enlisted man, will tell a junior to do something, give the junior an order, when both the senior and the junior know that that's going to get the junior man killed. But he can't say, I don't want to do that because I don't want to get killed. You got to do it. That's why the military is different from anything else that we do. So what Crozier faced, on the facts as we know them, was a tough decision, if in fact the virus was that serious. I think we could look at it in hindsight and say, maybe not. But commanders don't get to make decisions by the means of hindsight. The reason that commanders have the authority that they do is that they have to decide on facts on what they must do in the future without the benefit of hindsight. So my question to anybody is, how should that be handled in a leadership class? Is the answer, well, Crozier disobeyed naval regulations, every principle of the chain of command, and although he may have saved some of the crewmen's lives, he may have endangered other people. Or, on the other hand, a commander has to look out for his men, and if the chain of command isn't, then the right thing to do is sacrifice your career and look out for your men. I'd like to hear some other thoughtful people weigh in on that. I've got a post here. Future Naval Academy courses teach what has always been caught. Fog of war calls for resolute officers to make tough decisions and stand by your decision. Absolutely. Yeah. And that's why the military is different from everything else that we do. Okay, so much for Crozier versus Mertz. That may be the last we hear of Captain Brett Crozier. I wish him the best. Next, we've got Lew versus the First Amendment. This is a continuing fight between Lew and the First Amendment. And there's a story here that ran in the Post today. 62 Wuhan virus cases, new executive order opens parks, beaches, gyms, and churches. Well, when it comes to parks, beaches, and gyms, governor is unfettered by the provisions of this, the United States Constitution, except the due process and equal protection clauses. And she's been reminded of that part of the Constitution by a couple of attorneys, Tom Fisher and what's her first name? Azuzu. Rachel Azuzu. Yeah. But the governor cannot get it right on churches. And here's what the Daily News says. Today, Governor signed Executive Order 2020-36, effective 8 a.m. October 3. Eligible places of worship may resume services. I can't get past the first word.
Eligible.
So what does a place of worship have to do to be eligible? Do they have to apply to the Bureau of Religious Regulation? Is it like the Soviet Union that 17 different bureaucrats have to stamp your papers before you can open a church? Eligible places of worship. Could we have a list of the ineligible places of worship, Governor, so, we could avoid them? Maybe vandalize? No, I don't think we want to do that. Eligible places of worship may resume services, ceremonies, and operations at no greater than 25% occupancy load. This takes us back to yesterday, Barr versus London Breed, where London Breed, the mayor of San Francisco, said, you guys can have your services, but only one person can attend. Governor, I want to refresh your recollection on this document here. It's called the United States Constitution. There's a really important part here called the First Amendment. And this is what it says. Congress shall make no law respecting an establishment of religion or prohibiting the free exercise thereof. So you can't come out with executive orders prohibiting or even regulating the free exercise of religion. Now, let me explain what that means. If the church, if a religion has services that you don't agree with or you don't think make sense or are not logical, too bad. There's nothing you can do about it. You can't have a regulation that says religions may not teach this or must teach that. The truth of a religion is not the business of the state. The state has regulatory authority over places of worship like it has over any other building. So when the government passes a fire code that says you must have so many exits and you must have fire, the church can't say, sorry, First Amendment, you can't make us do that. You can. But you can't single out a church. You can't say that the banquet hall across the street from the church, which would accommodate 1,000 people, can have different fire regulations than the church, which would accommodate 1,000 people. So if you're going to do regulations about occupancy load, you have to do it in neutral terms, Governor. You can't say 25 occupancy load for churches. You could describe edifices, buildings, accommodations, and you could say, for this kind of a building, you could have a 25% load. But you can't have a special regulation just for a church if you want to be in compliance with the First Amendment, which, of course, you don't. And it keeps showing up. Now, once again, I guess I would label this regulation. I saw it on TV the other night. I watched it for a few minutes for old time's sake, a James Bond movie, From Russia with Love.
Oh, yeah.
Too bad we can't play that for sound.
That was Sean Connery.
Sean Connery, From Russia with Love. So here we are, back to the Soviet Union. First of all, if you're going to have Mass today, on Sunday, you must be an eligible place of worship. And I suspect there are forms to fill out, fees to be paid, offices to be accommodated, etc., in order to be recognized as an eligible religion, as eligible place of worship. 25% occupancy load, and then places of worship intending to resume operations must submit facility mitigation plans to DPHSS in order to operate under this section. So you've got to be an eligible place of worship. You must submit a facility mitigation plan to the Department of Public Health and Secret Services in order to operate under this section and observe all mitigation measures imposed in applicable DPHSS guidance. So it's not enough that you lay out the regulations. you have to have approval from the Department of Public Health and Social Services, like grocery stores don't have to. I don't think any other entity on Guam has to have prior approval from the Department of Religious Regulation. Congregants of places of worship under this section shall follow all mitigation measures imposed in furtherance of DPHSS guidance. So it's not enough that you follow the same rules as everybody else, you know, mask, wash hands, temperature, 6-foot distance. You have to submit your plan to the Department of Secret Services, and they can impose further regulations on you if you are an eligible place of worship. Anybody else, you're home free. You don't have to do that. Oh. And all you guys down in the legislature, you could bring, a majority of you could bring an end to this madness. You could do it on Monday, and we could get back to the Constitution, to something that looks like common sense, instead of dictatorial, anti-Catholic, anti-religious tyranny such as this regulation. Swimming pools are authorized to operate subject to applicable DPHSS regulations. You don't have to be an eligible swimming pool. Eligible child care centers and other child care facilities are permitted to resume regulations. It's really angry. It really makes me mad to see that a governor thinks that she has this authority in the face of the First Amendment. The language that she uses, you know, I've said ever since Commissar Donersi came out and said, I cannot approve, I cannot, what did she say? I cannot recognize and do not approve sacramental services. You got to be careful of the language you use. You can't get into the church's business. You can't say that there are ineligible places of worship. Okay, we're coming up to last break here, and I got our Fred on the line. Yeah, maybe our Fred's got a nomination.
Half a day. This is Claire Manglona from Security Title with an important warning. Wire fraud is real, and home buyers and sellers are one of the biggest targets, even on Guam. When sending money by wire transfer, be sure to confirm the wire instructions by phone, not email. In this case, it's good to be suspicious and know who you're dealing with. Let the professionals at Security Title work with you to minimize loss due to wire fraud. We are here to help.
Did you know your smartphone is one of the most powerful tools in our fight against COVID-19? That's why we're bringing you the Guam COVID Alert Exposure Notification app. Developed by Google, Apple, and the PathCheck Foundation, the app works by letting you know if you've been exposed to someone who's positive. It's completely voluntary, and more importantly, it's anonymous. Add your phone to the COVID fight. Go to guamcovidalert.guam.gov or download it from the App Store or Google Play now. Help Guam stop COVID-19.
Tall Tales with Bob Klitzkie is brought to you by Mezcla. Mezcla Chamorro Fusion Bistro and Mezcla Dos are open for takeout and delivery services. More details, call the Hagåtña location at 479-2652 or Mezcla Dos Upper Tumon at 646-6295. Get your Mezcla fix at the comfort of your home.
All right, so yeah, I got our Fred on the line here. Good afternoon, our Fred.
Good afternoon, our Attorney General. How you doing?
Doing great, Fred.
You know, I just heard you a few minutes ago said you're mad. And you know what? I am very upset as well. And I wanted to tell you why.
Go ahead, Alfred.
I just read the report. Candid News just put it out on Facebook, about the Asher Lebowski case and the report and how the respiratory nurses and doctors are held accountable and for their negligence caused the death of Asher. I think it'll come out maybe again in the newspaper or so forth, but it's on Facebook right now. And I want to say that I couldn't even read the whole report or the news break on it because I had to pause each time reading it because it is so disturbing to see what that little boy went through. Just to pause and reflect on each time that was stated what at so and so time what what Asher was going through, and to digest it and just to kind of feel what this 5-year-old boy is going through, laboring and breathing, hallucinating, and that no doctor ever came between 7 a.m. and 7 a.m. on October 29 till 7 a.m. October 30th, the next day. In a whole 24-hour period, no doctor saw him. And he never got into the ICU unit. He never got intubated. Our respiratory therapist or head of respiratory nurse never saw him. It was just a regular respiratory nurse, and they're just functioning on their own and making up their own. And if you read the report, it shows a lot of laziness and a lot of things they didn't want to do. His dad, David Lebowski, had to kind of play doctor and tell them what to do. But, at that moment in time, the authorities, like these nurses and GMH, takes over and say, no, we're doing everything. We know what to do. Now the report shows that they didn't do everything that could have been done, and they didn't even heed the advice of Asher's dad, who's not even a doctor, but, a layman knows some things that could be done, but they never did it. So Gov Guam needs to get their act together. Adelup, Gov Guam, it's about time. We're in the year 2020, but GMH is like back in 1980. I don't know. This is very upsetting. And, parents, I speak to the parents out there. You're taking your kids get sick, they go into the hospital, and how can we even stand for this type of stuff going on? How can we? And GMH is used as a toy or as a political game every 2 years, every 4 years to get votes. Bob, things need to change like yesterday, like right this minute.
Well, I have made this suggestion before, Alfred, and that is that we need to sell a hospital. We'd be actually better off if we gave it away, if we gave it to a company that could run it according to modern hospital standards. But if we did that, then we would lose all of that political patronage. So the politicians like to talk in terms of, what our top priorities, health, education, and police work, but no one really wants to make the hard decision, and certainly including our legislature.
Yeah, well, it needs to be done because the people of Guam are suffering, the adults, the kids. And this case and many cases like this you've known about, I know about, everybody knows about somebody who went in and something happened to them. We cannot sit back and just watch this show going on. It needs to happen, and it doesn't matter what the politicians want. It's what the people need and want. And off-island travel is not always feasible for everybody. It needs to change now. People of Guam need to rise up. They should be protesting outside GMH. It needs to change.
I would make the prophecy, our Fred, that anyone who is a candidate for the legislature right now who came out with a 2-page program for selling, leasing, giving away the hospital to a corporation that could run it properly would be a shoo-in for election. But that's not happening because people who run for office go out and find the 1972 playbook and think it's state of the art. So until we have some forward-looking leaders, unfortunately, we're just going to keep stumbling along with the same old hospital.
Well, some of the senators and the new ones running, they need to do that. Health crisis can happen anytime. We can't wait for November or December or next year or whenever. It can't be like that. This is health crises.
You're
It
right.
needs to be addressed, and I don't know how, but it needs to be done. And maybe the government of Guam, Adelup leaders, maybe Lillian Posada's up there can spearhead something, but just using it as a toy. I mean, I don't know how you go to bed at night with that on your mind, consciously.
Our
It
Fred,
needs to be done.
our Fred, do you have a nomination for us?
No, I don't. I'm going through my list. I call you after your halftime show. I have a bunch, actually.
Okay.
After your halftime show, we'll save it for your Friday, towards the end. The best last.
Okay, our
How's that
Fred.
sound?
I'll be looking forward to it.
Call you soon.
Okay, we'll see you then, our Fred.
All right, AG. Okay.
So let's see here. I've got 2 minutes till the big halftime show, maybe a little less. I've got a post here. You are absolutely correct, Bob. We thought having GRMC would encourage GMH to raise their standards, but it didn't. And ordinarily, competition would cause the improvement of any business. If all you have is McDonald's will chug along until Burger King comes along, and McDonald's will have to step up its game. But that doesn't work so well with hospitals because the competitive forces aren't so directly felt with hospitals as they are with other kinds of business. And, of course, we're stuck with a hospital. It's been a government. It started out when the Navy ran the island. It was a Navy's hospital. We took it over when civil government came along. Okay, well, we're going to take a break for the halftime show. When we come back, I'm going to pick up with Thomas I. Cries versus the black community.
The Point is KUSG, Hagåtña, Guam, 93.3 FM and 104.3 HD3.
This is a Fox News alert. The president infected. I'm Jack Callahan, Fox News. President Trump and the First Lady have both tested positive for the coronavirus.
The president tweeting early Friday morning, Flotus and I tested positive for COVID-19. We will begin our quarantine and recovery process immediately. We will get through this together. They took tests after presidential aide Hope Hicks tested positive.
She's a hard worker, a lot of masks. She wears masks a lot, but she tested positive.
The president speaking late Thursday night to Fox News before getting his results. At 74 years old, the president is at a higher risk of serious complications from the virus that's killed more than 200,000 people in the U.S.
Fox's Carmen Roberts. White House correspondent Kevin Cork reports they are now doing contact tracing to try and learn how the president, his wife, and Hope Hicks were exposed.
We're right down to the home stretch into the 2020 election.
And so they've been more aggressive. They've been on the road a little bit more. Unfortunately, there's more risk of exposure. So I would say from that perspective, I'm surprised. But I can tell you, again, based on everyone we've talked to tonight, and they've all said the same thing. Both he and the First Lady feel fine. And as long as they're asymptomatic and they continue to do the right thing and get the therapeutics, they should be in good shape.
Fox News has learned that White House Chief of Staff Mark Meadows and his top assistant, both of whom are in frequent contact with the president, have both tested negative. The president and the First Lady both in quarantine. Fox News medical analyst Dr. Mark Siegel says likely for several days.
At least 10 days from when the positive test occurred, with 2 negative tests occurring a couple of days apart. The second one to confirm the result of the first one.
Dow futures plunging on the news of the president's illness, trading more than 400 points lower. America is listening to Fox News.
As the island takes a stand against the coronavirus, so do the professionals at Horizon Properties. As a property owner and with the current health scare the island is facing, the last thing you should worry about is collecting rental payments or sending out a repairman to your property. Let Horizon Properties take care of that for you as you remain safe at home. Call Horizon Properties at 646-7616 or 777-7792. You can also visit them at www.horizonproperties.com. Horizon Properties, always there for you.
5, 4, 3, 2, 1, launch! That's just what we did with our new state-of-the-art mobile banking app as we celebrate 66 years of serving our island communities. It's loaded with a ton of new user-friendly features, including remote deposit capture. It's another way of saying you don't have to come to the bank to go to the bank. And if you want to come to the bank, we're happy to see your smiling face as long as you wear a mask. And we don't have long lines. Bank Pacific grows but branches, we place roots, and we're rooting for you. Member FDIC is watching.
Recapping this hour's Fox News alert, President Trump and the First Lady have both contracted the coronavirus. Their infections confirmed by tests done after presidential aide Hope Hicks tested positive earlier on Thursday. The president's White House doctor says both are feeling fine. They are now in quarantine. The president joins other world leaders who've been infected by the virus, including Britain's Prime Minister Boris Johnson and Brazil's President Jair Bolsonaro, both of whom recovered. Amazon says thousands of its U.S. workers have been impacted by the virus.
Amazon said more than 19,000 of its workers out of the 1.3 million people it employs, including at its Whole Foods market, have tested positive for COVID-19 or are presumed to have had the virus. Amazon said the number is far lower than expected given the infection rate for the general population. The online retailer has been under pressure from labor advocates to close warehouses with outbreaks. Amazon instead has kept facilities open to meet a surge in demand from shoppers, adding temperature checks, social distancing software, and other procedures to keep staffers safe. Amazon also expects to ramp up testing 50,000 U.S. workers per day for the virus by November. Hillary Barsky, Fox News.
Earlier, the president again condemned white supremacist groups, telling Fox's Hannity all of them, including the Ku Klux Klan, but says Joe Biden will not do the same for a violent anarchist group.
He should condemn also Antifa. Antifa is a horrible group of people. They kill people. What they do to people, and they're causing insurrection, they're causing riots. He doesn't want to do that.
The president says he has previously condemned white supremacy and will continue to do so. Gusty winds fanning a big Northern California wildfire overnight, complicating efforts to fight the glass fire, which has already destroyed hundreds of buildings in California's wine country. I'm Jack Callahan. This is Fox News.
Everyone has a busy schedule these days, and sometimes we forget to schedule our routine dental checkup and cleaning. Don't neglect your dental health. Schedule one today with Dr. Robert Yang and his Smile Team, conveniently located at the East West Business Center on Marine Drive, Upper Tumon. Call us today at 647-8702 or 3. Again, that's 647-8702 or 647-8703. We make smiles happen.
We all need to fight COVID-19, and we need all the weapons we can get to beat it. Your smartphone could be one of the most powerful tools to battle this pandemic. The Guam COVID Alert Exposure Notification app can let you know if you've been exposed to someone who has the virus. Add your phone to the COVID fight by going to guamcovidalert.guam.gov or download it from the App Store or Google Play now. Help Guam stop COVID-19.
Any footlong is a $5 footlong when you buy one at regular price. At participating locations, Subway, eat fresh.
Tall Tales with Bob Klitzkie is brought to you by Bank Pacific. Banking on the Pacific for 66 years.
No halftime show in professional football is any better than the halftime show here at Tall Tales, especially with that barrage of cannon fire at the end. So before the break, I told you that I would launch into Thomas I. Christ versus the black community after the halftime show, but I've got two people in the green room already. I've got Brian and I've got Dr. Tom Poole. So I'm going to go with Brian first and then with Dr. Tom Poole. Good afternoon, Brian.
Good afternoon, Mr. Klitzkie. How are you?
I'm doing great.
I called. I listened to your show, and I've been listening to it about 6 months every afternoon. I'm a listener, and I listened to our Fred come on the airwaves shortly before I called, and and I was listening to a piece about the most recent executive order issued by the governor, and I was thinking to myself, why are you irritated? And this is my own internal feelings, and I'll tell you, Mr. Klitzkie, I'm irritated because I'm fired up about this executive order. I got a 6-year-old daughter who could make rules and laws smarter than what we've got here in Guam. I'm not from Guam. I won't say what I do, but I just, and I was also thinking I wanted to mention to you, how is this possible to let this stand? The last time I checked the demographics of Guam, you got around 93% predominantly Catholic, and including me, I'm Catholic, but I don't understand why there's not anything being done about this. I've been listening the past 2 weeks about the judiciary, our Fred's comments on the hospital, and I'm thinking this is outrageous. Over.
Well, you're correct, Brian. And starting out with the Catholic Church, and I've been pretty hard on the Catholic Church because the Catholic Church has succumbed to the idiocracy that is prevailing here within our government instead of asserting its rights under the First Amendment. And I pointed out that when Commissar DeNorcy came out and said she couldn't approve sacramental services, the church should have gone to a war footing then. But they were nice guys and they tried to work it out, et cetera. And finally, the church said, I don't care about your regulations. We're going to have Mass on Sunday. And I'm one Catholic's going to stick with that, and I hope everybody else does too. As far as the hospital is concerned, apathy is one of the things, perhaps one of the more serious diseases that we suffer here from on this island, that we have to put up. We have the ability here on Guam to tolerate the intolerable. And I suppose there are a multitude of reasons for it. Yesterday I talked a little bit about the culture. And of course, once you mention the culture, that's pretty much an irrefutable argument. But I'm afraid that over the years, a sense of passivity and resignation has set into the point where people tolerate things they have no business tolerating. And perhaps,
can I give you an example? A perfect example of your point on that?
Yeah.
And I had my own words to describe your apathy. I would describe it as a numb. The people are numb to jackassery. But I'll give you a perfect example of what you're talking about. I first got here to Guam, and I'm thinking this is a jewel of the Pacific. I go to one of the beaches on one of the military bases. I go to one of the beaches, local beaches. 90-day difference. You go to the local beach, garbage, and I'm not bashing the locals. I'm bashing the culture of apathy that you just mentioned.
True enough. Well, I've also talked a little bit about learned helplessness on the program here, which is a thing that psychologists have studied. And I'm afraid that over the years, too many people have decided, well, I tried something and it didn't work, so there's nothing I can do. I'm just going to have to put up with stuff. But I suspect, Brian, that the phenomenon that I'm discussing and the dissatisfaction with it is one of the reasons that Tall Tales is the top-rated FM radio talk show in the afternoon here on the island.
You don't have to convince me, sir. I mean, yeah, you said it.
Okay, Brian.
Thank you so much for your time, Mr. Klitzkie.
Always a pleasure. Thanks for calling, Brian. Okay, and then next I have Dr. Thomas Poole. Good afternoon, Dr. Poole.
Good afternoon, Judge. Thank you. I enjoyed Brian's call, but I don't want Brian to call you Mr. I'm offended by that. You've done too much. You've got too many other titles. He can pick one of many and address you that way. But what I wanted to talk about, I just got off work, and earlier I heard you talking about the empty hotel room. And I'm not a businessman, and I'm not smart about that. But I have a friend who is, Peter Gill. I think he's a genius. He's the owner of QuickSpace and several other successful businesses. And Peter was talking about this several months ago, and he agreed with you. He said these hotels aren't going to come back like they were, not for a long, long time, if ever. And we've got these 10,000 hotel rooms. Peter's idea was, he said, I think we should appeal to the federal government and say we are the perfect place to house your refugees and your illegal aliens and things like that, because we're an island. And so they can't escape. And so you can bring them here, and they can do their training, they can wait for their court dates, they can learn how to live in America. And, we've done some of that in the past with the Vietnamese and I think with the Iraqis and that sort of thing. And that made sense to me, at least as a possibility, something to consider. And, of course, it's going to be more expensive flying those people out here. But when you look how much is spent on these refugees, it's probably an insignificant difference. And I thought it was kind of a clever idea. But you're so much smarter than I am. I wanted to throw it out there and see what you thought.
Well, actually, you and I travel parallel tracks because I had the same conversation with Peter Gill myself. When I came upon the realization that, we've got to figure out what to do with 10,000 hotel rooms, and waiting until things get back to normal is not doing something. So Peter gave me the same advice. He said, do something that nobody else wants to do, that would be able, where you could use those hotels. And that was one of the suggestions he made. The Aussies cut a deal with Nauru to house all of their applicants for political asylum outside of Australia. So I think that makes an awful lot of sense. Of course, you'd have the lunatic fringe object to it vehemently. Well, we don't want those people. We want something more glamorous.
Yes, perhaps so. But we may get down before too long before we're going to be desperate for ideas like that. And I just didn't want to. I'm glad Peter shared that with you. I think that one is one that could deserve attention if things get a lot worse.
Back in the days when you could rent a car and drive around the United States, I did that a lot. And you drive through a lot of small towns, Kansas, Nebraska, places like that. And you drive through these little towns that once upon a time had 4,000 or 5,000 people. And you see 2 or 3 substantial buildings, one that used to be the bank, one that used to be the movie theater, one that used to be something else.
The town mill?
Yeah.
That's a big one that's empty.
Yeah, the mill is nothing going on at the mill. And these buildings have plywood covering the windows. And then you get to the edge of town and there's a Casey's, and that's all that's left. And the only people in town, you can tell just by driving through town, the only people that are left are the old ones that can't go anywhere else. The towns are dying, and I'm afraid that that's exactly what's going to happen here if we don't get really imaginative and start planning to do something with those hotel rooms other than saying, well, we'll just wait till everything gets back to normal, because it's not going to happen.
I think so too, Judge. I'm worried about that. Thank you very much for the time, Judge. I'm grateful.
Good to talk to you, Tom. Okay, I've also got Wayne Despain. Okay. Good afternoon, Wayne.
Hi, good afternoon. How are you?
Doing great.
So I had a question about the governor's ruling on church attendance, the 25%. When it comes to the First Amendment, does she have any justification just in the simple fact that she is not Congress, and the First Amendment specifically mentions Congress making the law?
Well, let's get out our law and order notebooks here.
I know it's kind of weak, but
here's a little bit of constitutional law, Wayne. When the Bill of Rights was adopted, it was to protect the states and the people from the national government, and the Bill of Rights did not apply to the states. So the part about established religions did not apply to the states. Massachusetts had an established religion until 1820. But in the 1920s, in a case called Gitlow versus New York, the Supreme Court decided that actually some of the Bill of Rights were selectively incorporated into the 14th Amendment, a little bit of constitutional legerdemain, so that even though the First Amendment says Congress shall make no law, it is now interpreted to mean neither Congress nor state governments shall make a law prohibiting the free exercise of religion. Jose, you want to ask a question?
I have my hand raised. Okay, let's go backtrack. The governor is a part of Guam, which was her position is created by the Organic Act, which was created by the Congress, right?
Mm-hmm.
And so we fall under the Department of Interior, which
No.
Okay.
No.
I'm trying to draw a line that goes back, that probably go back to Congress.
Well, there is Article 4, Section 3 of the Constitution that says that Congress shall make needful rules and regulations for the territory. But in 1968, the so-called Mink Amendments added to the Elected Government Act by Congresswoman Patsy Mink of Hawaii, made all of the Bill of Rights applicable to Guam. If it weren't for that, and the incorporation of the Bill of Rights in the Organic Act, the free exercise clause wouldn't apply. But it does apply, and it applies to her in the same manner that it would apply in any one of the states, Wayne. I hope that wasn't too long an answer for you.
no, it is nice to know, especially when it comes to the Supreme Court. They always jump in and dig down to protecting the individual freedoms. That's what I like about them.
Sometimes they do, unless you happen to be an unborn individual, and their protection kind of stops, but that's another...
Well, and Citizens United was a bit off, I think, as far as the power of my dollar being my voice.
Well, if you listen to the show, you'll find that I've been unmercifully criticizing the Supreme Court. And I will tell you that the reason that appointments to the Supreme Court now are so bitterly fought over is because the Supreme Court forgot what it's supposed to be doing and is acting like a legislature. If it were scaled back to doing what it's supposed to do, people probably wouldn't even know who's on the court, but it's not the way it is now.
Yeah, that's a good point. Well, I appreciate your time and that answer. Thank you.
Okay, Wayne, nice talking to you. Okay, so back to the card. I've got Thomas I. Cries. I've got Thomas I. Cries versus the black community. But in order to really get into that, I've got to explain something called critical race theory. And critical race theory is what you're seeing every day. And what it is the theory that everything that happens is based on race, that there are oppressors and the oppressed. The oppressors control everything, and everything that happens is done in such a manner to continue to oppress the oppressors. Every single thing that happens in society. And this is where political correctness comes from. This is where identity politics comes from. The classic example of critical race theory is identity politics, which holds that there is no objective truth and facts don't matter. No matter what happens doesn't count. It's who was involved. So if a white police officer uses a firearm and kills a black person, it doesn't matter what actually happened, because the white police officer is the oppressor and the black citizen is the oppressed. Therefore, the white police officer must be punished and society must be torn apart, because this is an example of systemic racism. This is the liturgy that we're now living with. So when a white police officer, even if a black person shoots at a white police officer and the white police officer returns fire, it doesn't matter, because of it's an example of systemic racism, and critical race theory would hold that this systemic racism can only be countered by destroying society as we know it and rebuilding it to eliminate systemic racism. That's why you're seeing these Black Lives Matter riots in Portland, Seattle, Chicago, even Kenosha, for crying out loud. So I'm going to tie this into Thomas I. Kreis and his either being a useful idiot, fellow traveler, or perhaps a card-carrying member of Black Lives Matter. And I start out with something that ran in a publication called The Federalist, The Dangers of Critical Race Theory. Perhaps an honest appraisal of critical race theory is in order, so we can liberate ourselves from the sticky epistemological tentacles of a nonsensical theory. Epistemology is that philosophical discipline by which we decide how we know what we know. I know that's a little hard to chew up, but that's what it means. Unfortunately, writ into the DNA of its axioms is the deconstruction of rational dialogue. In other words, when you're talking about critical race theory, you can't talk about it. Because if you're talking about critical race theory, unless you're embracing it, you are then the oppressor. So the one who believes in critical race theory must practice what Herbert Marcuse described as selective tolerance. You only tolerate the kind of speech that is correct within the concept of critical race theory. Everything else must be suppressed. Unfortunately, writ into the DNA of its axioms is the deconstruction of rational dialogue. That, too, you see, is just another tool of white privilege. Leftism can't have room for questions. I know this is a little bit thick, but in order to really understand what's going on with Black Lives Matter and perhaps what's going on inside Thomas Kreis's head, other than the constant repetition of his mantra, which sounds like this: I. Where's the real Joe Cruz? Thank you, real Joe Cruz. All right. Okay, Joe, we got it. Yeah. All right. We could extol what is, by and large, a just system for the advancement of anyone who applies himself and works hard. That's the American system. Individuals in that system could be spending their days in hope and personal achievement using the liberties available to them in this country. Or we could have a healthy discussion about race as it relates to traditional American principles. Sounds right? Yet instead, we'll just have to wait for the virus of critical race theory to work its nihilistic destruction on the black community, while whites sit on the sidelines with their shut, masked mouths on bended knee, advancing their privilege. Yeah, guys like White Coat for Black Lives Matter. Commitment. The next article I have here before I get back to Thomas Kreis is from the Federalist. Why Black Lives Matter only empowers racist white leftists. Leftists are outing themselves as racist complicit in the perpetuating systems of oppression. Maybe it's time we started believing them. Black Lives Matter is the operational arm of, quote, critical race theory, the postmodern philosophy of critical theory applied to race. Critical theory suffers an inescapable epistemological conundrum. It's the liar's paradox. If a cretin says all cretins are liars, is he to be believed? Let me translate that into modern lingo. If a Democrat says all Democrats are liars, is he? No, that's not a good example because the answer is yes. Okay, I notice I've got Daniel on the line. So good afternoon, Daniel. Welcome back.
Oh, thank you so much. I just wanted to appreciate the conversation. What you do is you actually do what they did in the Dark Crystal. You ask the two talking heads, if I ask the other person the opposite question, what the answer is, they should answer with the affirmative. But going back to our previous conversation, I appreciate you having me back on. We kind of ended with you asking me what would be taught in the Naval Academy with regards to the Crozier incident. And I think what was happening is a pretty good example of Socratean questioning where we kind of went around in circles based on the question that I asked previously, because I opened it up with the question of what...
Daniel, excuse me, I got to take a short break here, just a couple seconds, and we'll come right back to you, okay?
Sure, thank you. Appreciate you.
Mezcla Chamorro Fusion Bistro in Hagåtña and Mezcla Dos Upper Tumon are now open for takeout and delivery services. For more information, call now at 479-2652 or 3 or Mezcla Dos at 646-6295. Mezcla Chamorro Fusion Bistro brings you island hospitality with the true taste of modern Chamorro cuisine at the comfort of your own home. They take your local favorite dishes and serve them with extra flair you will only find at Mezcla. Mezcla, a true taste of Guam.
You've got a job to do. Having the right equipment for the job is critical, and East West Rental has the exact tools you need. Get it done faster with the right stuff. Whether it's landscaping tools, concrete tools, lifts, trucks, lights, generators, trench boxes, welders, tents, tables, and chairs, they're here to help you tackle any project you're working on, big or small. Open Monday to Saturday, 7 to 5, closed Sundays. Find what you're looking for at East West Rental Center in Upper Tumon or call 646-1463.
Tall Tales with Bob Klitzkie is brought to you by Horizon Properties. Doing real estate since 1978. 14 years here on Guam. Call Maria Miller from Horizon Properties at 777-7792.
So here we are. Here we are at Wrigley Field in Chicago, the seventh inning stretch, and I go straight from Chicago to Daniel, who's been patiently holding on. So Daniel, go for it.
Thank you again, Bob. Really appreciate that. Like I said, our conversation yesterday kind of got left hanging. It was. I really appreciate you giving me the opportunity. We were talking about Captain Crozier and the decision he made, and one of the questions that I had prompted from the very beginning was, what would have happened should you had a copious amount of individuals succumb to COVID at the time? We then kind of went in like a Socratean circle of asking questions about X, Y, and Z, and it came to the point of what would be taught at the Naval Academy in years from now about the situation. So if we bring it all the way around full circle and we ask again the question, what would have happened to Captain Crozier should have that ship succumb to 50, 60, et cetera, deaths via COVID? Well, we'd be teaching the Academy that he made the wrong decision. As of now, and prompted by posts made by various organizations in the news industry, he's getting a bad rap. Again, as I reiterate that I was a sailor under his direct command, and I have utmost respect for his decision-making capabilities, I would say that his decision, and you asked the question yesterday, well, what about the admiral that was right down the road, right down the hallway? There was no way at all that there was information that was being excluded or hidden from that admiral. So we all know how chain of commands work. You would ask this two-star admiral, would ask the one-star admiral, why didn't you know about this? And the answer is, of course he knew about this. So the problem is we run into is, did Captain Crozier go over his superiors to make a decision that was in the best interest of the crew or not? I truly believe that the decision made was, at the time, with the information given, the best decision possible for the benefit of the crew. And what I've been thinking about in the last 24 hours since we talked about this is the ramifications of why a show as renowned and beloved as yours is carrying this story. And the answer is obviously because of Guam's direct influence or direct involvement in this situation. And this is where I'm ignorant towards the fact, because I played a certain role in the hotel, I'm going to call it kerfuffle, the hotel involvement, utilizing the hotels on Guam for the Roosevelt sailors. I was involved in that. I was involved in discussing certain political aspects with individuals about, I'm sorry I'm trying to be so vague, it's just, I'm not trying to be vulgar towards anything about the people of this island because I love them dearly. I've made very good friends here. However, I am so just disgusted with the government here. And so when I say it this way, I just want to address the issue that it was twofold. He brought a carrier with an unknown disease at the time into Guam, which was very trying for the political leaders of Guam at the time. And then he was faced with the decision to do this in the first place, feeling that what he was being fed, the information he was being fed about this disease was far, 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 far more intense than perhaps what it is and we know to be now. Therefore, my conclusion to what the question that I asked previously and to answer your question of what would be taught at the Naval Academy about this situation is you're darned if you do and you're darned if you don't, because had sailors in the scores passed and been killed by this disease, he would have been obliterated. Same as the captain for the McCain that allowed his ship to be run into. Same scenario. However, because he did what he did and said, no, I'm not getting the answer I want, I'm not being provided the information I want, I do not trust my superiors in this situation, and the lives of 3,000 plus individuals are in my hands, I'm going to throw out some information and I'm going to force the hand. The hand was forced. We saw where it lied. One, and God rest his soul, one individual on the USS Roosevelt passed away. There was one. It was a chief petty officer, and God rest his soul. And because of his actions, now we need to decipher the information appropriately to figure out, was his action, based upon the current information, appropriate or not?
Daniel, at the beginning of the program, unfortunately, I guess you weren't listening, but I did.
No, I missed it. I'm sorry.
I picked it up, and I don't want to spend too much time with it because our international radio listening audience has already been through it once. But
yes, sir.
I suggested that the focus at the Naval Academy or Naval War College or places where such matters are discussed is on leadership, not a post-mortem. You did a good post-mortem, but that isn't what I'm after. So I think that if I were to reduce it to its very simplistic elements, when is it appropriate for a commander to disobey naval rules and regulations with respect to the chain of command and communications?
So I like your answer there, and with regards to communication, and that's where I agree. There is a discrepancy with the channels that were used. No questions asked. I mean, there was no questions asked. The channels he used were not of military degree. However, his use of these, I believe, is fully justified, and we can take this back to many different things. It would be very far-stretched, but I want to throw this out there and see what you think. What would have happened in the situation in Benghazi had non-military channels been used and maybe a leak to the media been produced that said, hey, we need help, we're asking for it, we need help now? Because now, after the fact, we know that we have several dead Americans on our hands, and that didn't have to be the case. If the public was made aware of it via the appropriated channels, would we still have those same fatalities?
Well, right now we're in a situation where we're going to instruct future commanders as to how to handle themselves within the chain of command when they see something that they think is wrong. So when I went through when I went through this the first time, you know, I hit on that and said the alternatives are for the commander to. You got a chicken in your yard there, Daniel.
Yes, I have several of them. Yes, but I'm sorry.
Yeah. So he does what he's supposed to do, what the Navy expects him to do, and how it comes out is how it comes out, because we don't hold commanders responsible for having 20/20 hindsight when they make decisions.
Sure.
Or,
and I guess this is where
let me finish, Dan.
Yes, sir.
Or do we encourage commanders when they're in a situation like Crozier was in to sacrifice their careers and to do what Crozier did?
Sure. That's where I guess it comes down to: are we sacrificing careers, or are we sacrificing sailors?
Well, it's easy to say, but. You know, given the nature of...
For sure, and I would never want to be in that situation ever in my life.
Daniel, the chain of command here is that first I talk and then you talk, okay? We can't both...
Yes, sir, go ahead. Sorry.
We can't be a Trump and Biden here and get very far.
Well played, sir. Well played.
I've got...
and I do have a mute button.
Yeah, there you go.
I'm not going to use it.
Yeah. So a program that encourages commanders to use their own judgment and violate naval regulations and rules and communications channels could lead to disasters far greater than the one that the commander is attempting to avoid. And that's the reason those regulations are the way they are.
Okay. I hear what you're saying. Then my question is, what would be the worst possible case scenario that he
but put yourself in the position. Now you're teaching officers what you want them to do once they're in command of ships and things like that.
Okay.
And they're faced with dilemmas. What is the proper way to resolve a dilemma?
My proper way, which I believe wholeheartedly, and this is where I think I'm not saying digressing, but I believe that if you've granted me a command of a $1.4 billion U.S. asset to do so with as I please, utilizing U.S. assets, i.e., and this may have been part of the issue, Guam as a U.S. territory, what then? And am I expecting 24-hour round-the-clock updates? What was and what could have been is what I'm comparing. The results were of him doing this. 1, U.S. casualty. What was that compared to should he not have utilized
that's
those forbidden chains of communication?
I keep coming back to this. I'm not looking for a postmortem. I'm saying what guidance should be given to commanders when they're faced with this kind of dilemma where the regulations call for them to do one thing and to use one chain of command, but they have a better idea. What do we advise commanders?
He used. Sorry, go ahead.
Go ahead.
He utilized the chain of command. It was insufficient. And that's my personal and humble belief because I've utilized the chain of command and I've found it lacking and wanting. Eli ipsum samatniai. You found it, you wanted it, you found it, and it was lacking. Therefore, when it comes down to the ultimate decision and you take on the brunt straight to the chin, knowing that it's going to hurt, but the truth came out. The one sailor passed. What was the alternative?
So that lieutenant commander who's teaching that leadership course will advise his class that if you don't trust the chain of command, it's okay to follow a different course.
No, that's not what I'm saying. That's not what I'm saying. I'm saying, what if the chain of command is silent and is waiting for you to scapegoat? Because darned if you do, and darned if you don't, but you're going to go down because we don't have an answer for you. And you know what? We're just waiting for you to play the card. That's what I believe happened.
I'm trying to move away from what happened. I'm trying to look towards what's going to happen in the future. If the
command is silent, you go forth.
If
you're by yourself, you go forth.
If the rule in Crozier's case becomes the Navy-wide rule. Daniel, I got a break coming up, and I got a couple more callers in the green room. But thanks a lot for coming back.
Hey, thank you. You always stimulate my intellect, and you are one of my favorite. You and Ray Gibson are a pillar of strength on this island, and I appreciate all you do every single day.
Okay, thank you, Daniel. Okay, we're heading down the home stretch, and I'm going to be riding down the home stretch with Senator Chris Duenas and Supper Jack. I hope he's at the drive-through.
Half a day. This is Claire Manglona from Security Title with an important warning. Wire fraud is real, and home buyers and sellers are one of the biggest targets, even on Guam. When sending money by wire transfer, be sure to confirm the wire instructions by phone, not email. In this case, it's good to be suspicious and know who you're dealing with. Let the professionals at Security Title work with you to minimize loss due to wire fraud. We are here to help.
Top End Pest Control is who you call for all your pest control needs. Got a problem with roaches, ants, spiders, rodents, fleas, ticks, termites? No problem. They do it all. Top End Pest Control is a service-disabled, veteran-owned small business and HubZone certified. Serving Guam since 2012. Call them today for a quote, 487-5657, or email topendpest@gmail.com. Check them out on Facebook at Top End Pest Control and give them a like. Top End Pest Control for all your pest control needs.
Tall Tales with Bob Klitzkie is brought to you by Bank Pacific. Banking on the Pacific for 66 years.
Okay, so here we are heading down the home stretch on Tall Tales. We just pulled out of the starting gate at Churchill Downs in Louisville, Kentucky. And first on the green room is Senator Chris Duenas, and then we'll get to Supper Jack. Yes, sir, Senator Chris Duenas.
Good day, Your Honor, Honorable Marine, Senator, and my favorite talk show host. I have a pithy comment on Daniel's discussion. I didn't anticipate to just say something really quickly, but many of my Navy friends say if he was so compelled on this issue, he could have asked for a relief of duty and not have gone down that road to turn that over to somebody else, knowing that that decision, as Daniel says, may be career-ending, but because going through those channels was a complete breakdown and break of protocol, because you just don't do that. You use your chain of command, and you always respect your chain of command. So if he was so compelled and so overwhelmed by that issue, he could have asked for relief of duty.
An interesting idea.
Sonic is a carrier. I mean, they could fly a new captain out anytime. Anyways, Bob, I wanted to mention that many of the callers today and over the week in the international radio listening audience have been discussing this issue with lockdowns and the issue of, you brought it up today in terms of the churches and this crazy issuance of this new executive order, and it's ambiguous and weird, subject to interpretation language other than just being clear. And Bob, I want to thank the point. I have sent out a media release to all major media on a proposal that, if elected as senator, a bill that I would introduce. And I just want to say really quickly what it does. It is an amendment to Title 10 of the Guam Code annotated, and I just want to read this really quickly. It's basically an amendment that basically says, notwithstanding any other provision of this chapter, and a declaration of state of public health emergency shall be terminated automatically 30 days unless, and it scratches out Imagalahenguahan and it puts in Ilegislature, and then under the same standards and the procedures of this act. Basically, the renewal would require, once again, the legislature. The reason why I wanted to bring this up on your show and thank the point and Ray Gibson for taking on my release on this proposed legislation if I were elected in the 36th Guam legislature is, this is exactly how we would vet these issues and this crazy merry-go-round of what's going on with these lockdowns. Lockdown, you can do this, you can do this, you can't do this. The legislature, Bob, as far as I'm concerned, is the people's house. It is the only way that the people get to speak. And if the legislature were the one who would hold the governor that every time a governor, not this governor, any governor going forward if this bill were to pass, that if you execute an emergency, you've got 30 days. And after that 30 days, you come to the legislature and you explain exactly why you need to continue. And it's a failure of your leadership. It's a failure of your ability to deal with the emergency. Then the legislature will hold you to that. If it's compelling, then they will give you another 30 days going forward. And you won't, I don't think any of the ambiguous and difficult language to read in the continuous executive orders going forward would ever pass muster with any reasonable legislature. So I just wanted to thank you and the point, and I hope that next week we can discuss this in the media and other media outlets, because this is a very good proposal as far as I'm concerned. And if I were a senator today, I would have introduced it months ago.
Well, it sounds pretty good to me, Chris. And Ray and I also keep wondering why a majority of the legislature don't rise up and put us out of our misery, because they have the ability to do that. And not a single one has stepped forward. Just the introduction of a resolution by a single senator could have a dramatic effect. But I think you're really on the right track with that, Chris. Good luck.
Bob, I just wanted to say that I don't want to wait till the 36th, and if I'm not elected, that's okay. I just hope that a senator sitting right now would just take this bill and introduce it, because that means in the next 30 days, we just passed a couple days ago, the renewal. Maybe the next 30 days, if they would pass this in the next 10, 15 days, the next 30 days, the administration would have to come down and make a compelling argument as to why they wanted to continue this madness. Thank you, Bob, and have a great weekend. And we're all suffered through it, and I can't wait to talk to you on Monday.
Okay, thanks for calling, Chris. Good talking to you. Okay, and then probably my final caller of the day is going to be the person who was formerly known as Drive-Through Jack. Now he's Supper Jack. But I have to tell you, Jack, that I got a message from somebody wanting to know what day it was that Drive-Through Jack commented on Jane Flores's column, because the person that communicated with me was obviously quite impressed and wanted to pass it on to others. So I guess, back in the days when the real Joe Cruz was my producer. Yeah, back in the day when the real Joe Cruz was my producer, he was constantly building a cult of personality.
I don't think he's left.
Because when people would sign in on Facebook, good afternoon to the real Joe Cruz, and to you too. What's your name? So it looks like, Jack, you're trying to build this cult of personality. When people say, "What day was that that Drive-Through Jack called up? I want to make a copy of that." So, what can you tell us today, Drive-Through Jack?
Well, I don't know what day it was, but I'm sure it'll show up in executive order, or maybe Chris can introduce a bill. I'm just joking. It's Fish Friday, so I'm having fish this Friday. And I just called because I heard you discussing about what happened to the Theodore Roosevelt. And, we were both in the military a long, long time ago. And I wasn't an officer. I was an enlisted. But I always knew that as a military member, we were here to protect democracy, not practice it. And, that always was thrown out at me when I said, well, we could have done this better. We could have done this better. And the first thing coming out is that, no, you need to follow the tech order. And tech orders are what in the Air Force we call everything had a tech order. It doesn't matter what you did in your uniform, whatever you did that day, there was a tech order around that told you how to do it, whether you agreed with it or not. There was a movie called Crimson Tide that came out in the 90s, starred Denzel Washington, the great Gene Hackman, and one of my favorite actors, Jason Robards, who had a tail-end scene. And it shows the conflict of what happens when, you have some old school guard and you got some new blood coming in, and they have different philosophies. You have technology. You have a lot of things that are coming into the mix. And I think, people should watch that movie to get an idea on the complexity of things. And that was a movie based in fiction about at a time when the commander of the sub had control over the nuclear launch. Now, of course, at the end of the movie, they tell you that the commander doesn't have that ability anymore. That's with the president. And that function has been removed. And I just urged them. I don't think this will be if you're asking what will be taught in military schools and things like that as strategic strategies or in tactics or something, I would say that this is a one-off incident, and I think that safeguards are in there. I think we have the most capable military in the universe, and that includes the ones out of space. So, we do have a space command now. Thank you, Air Force. So, I would say that I know what you meant by what kind of lesson can be learned and taught, so these things won't happen again. I think really this is a one-off incident. And I do agree with Daniel that because the commander was out here in the Pacific, he was like, he was there with the information coming in. And, things coming out of China at the time was, people were dying. And it was pretty harsh. And we would have this discussion on your show. It was in February. And while we were having this discussion about what was coming out of Wuhan, do you remember correctly that what was coming out of the governor's office was, hey, come down and get your war claims. So that was going on in every 30 minutes. So, yeah, it's a hard thing to fathom. But
and Jack, that's the reason that I brought it up. And whether it's a one-off or not, it may or may not be. But and when you're talking military leadership, the idea is to find really hard challenges to deal with, not the easy ones, but the hard ones, which I shorten down to: what does a commander do when he sees that taking an action that is outside the rules and regulations is what he thinks he should do, as opposed to doing what the Navy expects a commander to do? And these hard decisions are the reason that commanders have the authority that they do. I didn't mean to go into a long post-mortem of what happened, which is kind of the way it turned out. So it's my fault for not properly framing the question. But I wanted to, what I was interested in was the kind of discussion as to what we would do, what we would have commanders do in the future when you're faced with a situation where you think your men are in danger, but the chain of command is not reacting as fast as you think they should. Do you pull a Crozier, or do you do what is the orthodox commander does, keep trying the chain of command, etc., and how it comes out is how it comes out? That's the dilemma.
Well, yeah, yes. In the fictitious movie Crimson Tide, of course, Denzel Washington ends up getting his promotion, and Gene Hackman retired with honors in The Setting Sun. But the wisdom came from Jason Robart, in what he said, that what you guys did on this day will forever change. It was a great speech, and it's like a minute long. You should play it. He passed some wisdom there. And in real life, we see that
Jack, what you said on Wednesday will forever change tall tales. Thanks for calling, Jack.
Have a great Friday, Bob.
Thank you.
Have a great Friday.
The Point is KUSG, Hagåtña, Guam, 93.3 FM and 104.3 HD3.
This is a Fox News alert. President Trump has the virus. I'm Jack Callahan, Fox News. The president tweeting early this morning he and the First Lady have both tested positive for the coronavirus.